Thank you for joining me today to talk about creating a culture of experimentation. We're going to look at 3 ideas to create a culture that will help you build products faster. I'm Jeremy Morgan. I've been a developer and tech leader for nearly 20 years. Though this talk is based on experience in tech leadership, it can apply to many different industries. To compete in today's environment, you need to innovate quickly. This is the only way to win. Now, in the past, the amount of money you had for advertising or the technology available was your biggest differentiator. Now, these are still factors, but today, process is your biggest differentiator. How quickly can you turn an idea into a future? The organizations that do this the fastest are the ones that win. Now, the business cares about 3 different things when it comes to software delivery: speed, quality, and cost. Speed is far more important now than it used to be. Companies are innovating at a breakneck pace, and the barrier to entry is lower than ever. A few folks with some laptops in a garage can change entire industries, and we're seeing that every day. Your organization has to move as quickly as they do. Quality is also important. In the old days, you had more time to fix bugs, and people weren't able to tell thousands of others about it in 5 seconds. We didn't have zero-day vulnerabilities making the front page of the news, but we do now. An organization's biggest assets are carbon-based, not silicon. Attracting and retaining employees is harder than ever. Avoiding burning them out should be a top priority so you can have effective people who won't be job hunting on their lunch break. Creating a culture of experimentation helps you achieve each of these things, and I'll show you how. Remember this? This was the old waterfall style of software development. We'd gather all the requirements and analyze everything to death. We'd wait months or years to put in new features into our software. You could have an idea and it wouldn't show up into the product for months or years. And this is how we do things now. We come up with a new idea, like a single feature in the software. We design it, develop it, test it, integrate it, and send it to the customer. And we get their feedback right away. If they like it, we keep it. If not, we discard it, and we move on to the next idea. Now, while the waterfall cycle was months or years, we can now pull this off in a day or 2. It's a constant cycle of experimentation. We look at what we're building, the work output, then we test it, learn, and iterate. Now, to do this, we need to create a culture of experimentation. We need to run experiments every single day as a part of our business process. So what is a culture of experimentation? It's an environment where you're constantly running experiments with your teams all day, every day. Team members are empowered. They aren't afraid to experiment and try new things. They're willing to take risks without fear. Now, you might be thinking this is too simple of an idea, and it may even seem like common sense. But the implementation is complex, and it requires some very specific ideas and tasks to be implemented. Now, let's look at what type of experimentation I'm talking about. We all know the definition of an experiment, but what are we experimenting with? The features or software or product, right? What if our users could blank? What if we moved this button over here? What if we simplified X? These types of experiments should be constantly running. You should be continuously experimenting, gathering findings, and making changes to your software or product. This constant evolution is the differentiator. You should always make your customers happier with your product than they were last week. How the software or product is deployed. Now, this part of the experimentation is purely technical. Would doing X make our software deploy faster? If we did X, would it make it quicker to recover from errors? This is an ongoing experiment. This goes on forever. Your software should be easier and faster to deploy than it was last week. How do you measure success? This is another key area to experiment with. Are the users sending positive feedback? Or are retention numbers going up? Are there better ways to have the users vote for the things that they like or dislike? You should find new and creative ways to measure your progress. But how do we implement this? What do we need to do to make this endless science experiment successful? The keys to creating a culture of experimentation come straight from the DevOps handbook. The first and foremost is small batch size. Your tasks should be broken down to their simplest form. For instance, if you were manufacturing automobiles, you wouldn't have like a single ticket that says paint the car red. Instead, you break it down to smaller, more manageable tasks, like paint the hood, or even clean the hood to prepare it for painting. Think about it. If somebody wanted to experiment with a new way to paint the car red and it didn't work out, you'd have a ruined car. But if they experimented with how the hood is prepared and the paint didn't stick, they could just sand it down and go back to the old way. Smaller tasks have less of a cost when they fail. The next key is to value all input equally. This means whether the person's an intern or a CTO, enable them to speak up with ideas and consider them. Each human on your team has something to contribute, and they could be keeping their best ideas to themselves out of fear. Remove that fear and show each team member their ideas matter. You never know when the next groundbreaking idea will come from. This step can be difficult at many organizations, but the payoff is immense. Give everyone a voice. So a small batch size and encouraging ideas from everyone will get your idea factory spinning. But what happens when something fails? Blameless postmortems are the key here. Sit down at the end of the sprint or the end of the part of the project and talk about what went wrong. Don't blame a particular person or team for the failure, and don't shame people. Talk about what we can learn from what happened. Instead of assigning blame, focus on changes we will make to prevent the mistake from happening again. Now let's take a look at small batch sizes. And this will be a small example of how you could do this. We'll start with a ticket. Move to a new database system. Now this is far too abstract for experimentation. I mean, do we pick up and move the whole thing to a new open source database system we found on the internet last night? Of course not. The expense of this experiment is too great. We spend 3 months moving to a new system, and if it doesn't work out, then we've lost out big time. Our competitors just had 3 months to get their product racing ahead of ours. So we need to break it down. To move database systems, we must move tables, procedures, indexes, and more. So we'll start out with tables. Now this is a smaller bite, but it's still not the place to experiment. We must break down the detail even more. See, I wouldn't assign this ticket to an engineer because our cost of failure is still too high. The batch of work is just too large. Let's take a smaller bite. How about we move just the finance tables to the new database? We can do this in a day or two. Now we're getting into a place where we can experiment a little. If we have an idea to move these and it doesn't work out, then we lost 2 days. This may be something that your organization can handle. So if your engineer comes to you with a neat idea to save time, it might be worth examining. And let's break it down even further. We're just going to move the accounts payable sections. Now we have a very small batch size. This could take a few hours. Knowing that we have several of these 3-hour chunks ahead, we can experiment with ways to make this small task go faster. If it doesn't work, we're out a few hours. If it does make things faster, we're going to save time each time we do it, and it's going to make this overall ticket here at the top go much faster. Break down each of your tasks into the smallest bite possible. This means a lot of tickets, and maybe your engineers are closing 3 or 4 tickets a day, but this smaller batch size will pay off. With a small batch size, incremental changes are less costly, experiments are resolved faster, and the overall speed of development increases, making you faster to market. The next key is valuing all input equally. Now, what will that result in? It will embolden everyone on the team. Each person will feel valued and not afraid to throw out new ideas. It will encourage them to get creative, even if they're inexperienced or outside their level of expertise. It will increase psychological safety. Team members who feel safe to express ideas and experiment with things will be more creative and passionate about what they do. And it will establish ownership. Each team member will feel like their contributions matter. It's not the company's project, it's their project. And the final key is the blameless postmortem. The idea behind this is to learn from problems rather than assign blame. When someone makes a mistake, as all humans do, we don't condemn them. We don't blame them. We don't make them feel ashamed for it. This doesn't mean we look the other way or pretend like nothing bad happened. We embrace the mistake or bad judgment call and learn from it. That's the crucial part of the idea. We learn from what we do to ensure that it doesn't happen again. So with the culture of experimentation, we learn, then we improve, then we experiment some more, over and over until we polish our process to be as smooth as it can be. And we're never done with this process. It only becomes faster and better. So let's go back to our main objectives to tie this up. Once we're in this flow of constant experimentation and improvement, we're now faster. We get better speed and our features out faster than the competition. Our quality improves as we find ways to quickly remove defects and learn from it. Our cost declines as we have happier engineers who may even be having fun with what they're doing. Thank you for watching this talk on creating a culture of experimentation. This has helped my teams immensely over the years, and I'll hope you'll consider it for your teams.